What's up, YouTube? I'm here to do my prediction video for UFC 252. Let's start the bottom. The first fight is Kai Kamaka versus Tony Kelly. To me, these guys are both primarily grapplers. I think Tony Kelly's probably a little bit better of a striker. Kai's a little younger and a little bit stronger of a wrestler. I think, like I said, jiu-jitsu-wise, they're really, really close. This fight's tough just because I think Tony's, like I said, the better striker, and it's kind of just, can Kai consistently get it to the ground and keep it there, or can Tony kind of scramble up and, make it a fist fight? I do think Tony's a little bit better, but I'm going to lean towards Kai just because he's from Hawaii, and in a fight where it's this close, and I don't think Tony has a massive advantage, I'm going to lean towards the guy from Hawaii. If you're betting on it, though, I lean towards Tony. I think Tony is the slightly better fighter, but I'm going to go with Kai. I do think his wrestling gets it done, and I think he wins at least 2 of the 3 rounds. Next is Chris Daukaus versus Parker Porter. And to me, I feel like Chris, I just looked this up. I've never seen these guys fight, but I'm pretty sure Chris is 8-3, and Parker Porter is 9-5. If I got their records wrong, I'm picking the guy who's 8-3. I'm just saying when you see them fight, whoever's 8-3. I think that the guy who's 8-3 is, younger by 5 years. He's 30. The other guy's 35. I think, like I said, I think Parker's 35. And neither one of these guys is great. It's a little weird that they're getting this fight. I think it's just because the UFC, had all these people fall out real fast. Luckily it wasn't really on the main card other than one fight on the main card. Most of the fights that have been falling out have been on the undercard. They're just 2 big swinging heavyweights, and I mean, realistically, this fight's a coin flip. I wouldn't bet on this fight, but I'm leaning towards the guy who's 8-3 just because he's way younger and he's been fighting more consistently. Next is Ashley Yoder versus Liv Souza. To me, this is going to be a grappling fight, and I think Souza's just way better. There's really not too much to say about this fight. Souza's way younger. They're both primarily jiu-jitsu chicks, and I think Souza's just way better on the ground. So I'm going to pick Souza. I think she's either going to win by a pretty dominant decision or win by submission. Next is TJ Brown versus Daniel Chavez. This fight's tough. I think on the ground, TJ Brown has a slight advantage, but I think Chavez has a big advantage on the feet. I think in terms of boxing, he's way better. This one's tough just because I haven't seen Chavez ever fight, but just based on his record and people he's fought, I think he looks like the better guy, but I think TJ's the better grappler. So it's really tough. I'm leaning towards Chavez. Like I said, I hate it when I've barely seen these people fight, but his striking looks really good, and I feel like if he can keep it on the feet, I think he's going to light up Brown, so I'm going to pick Chavez to win by knockout. Next is Felice Herring versus Viana Jambordino. To me, this one's tough because I think Felice is the better striker, as where I think Verena is the much better jiu-jitsu chick. A lot of these ones are just tough just because some of these people I've never seen fight, or Felice, who's been out for a while. I don't know how good she's going to look after such a long layoff. But I'm leaning towards Felice. I hate when there's so many fights like these on big cards where it's like I have no idea how these people are going to look and shit like that, and I don't have too much to say other than my guesses. But yeah, I'm leaning towards Felice. I just think she's the better boxer, and like I said, I think if she can keep it on the feet, she's going to outpoint Viana. And, yeah, so I'm going to lean towards Felice to get a close decision. Next, we got Jim Miller versus Vince Pichel. And this one's a little bit easier to talk about. Vince is definitely the much bigger guy. In terms of striking, they're probably close. Vince probably hits a little bit harder. In terms of wrestling, I think Jim's the better wrestler, but I think Pichel's just the bigger, stronger guy. So I think Miller will have a hard time taking him down. If it is on the ground, I give Jim the advantage. I think his jiu-jitsu is going to be the big key thing if it's ever on the ground. I don't think it is, though. I think Vince knows to keep it on the feet. And if it's on the feet, I think it's really close. I think that both these guys are good strikers. Like I said, I think Miller's a little bit better with his technique, better at mixing it up. But Pichel hits harder and is, like I said, the bigger guy. He can, pin Jim against the fence if he needs to. Both these guys are really good, but I'm leaning slightly towards Miller. I just do feel like this fight will hit the ground. And I think the longer it's on the ground, the more likely I think Jim is likely to lock up a submission. And because of that, I'm leaning towards Jim Miller to win by submission either, I think, sometime in the second. Next, we got onto the main card is Herbert Burns versus Daniel Pineda. And Daniel Pineda's looking really good, especially with his boxing, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think Daniel Pineda's always have a pretty big weakness, and it's when he fights better jiu-jitsu guys. And I don't think Pineda has the most insane takedown defense. I mean, it's better than average, but I think Gilbert Burns is going to lock up with him, drag him to the ground, and win by sub. I just think there's just a huge advantage in terms of jiu-jitsu. Like, Pineda can definitely, like, if he's circling out and he's using his boxing well, he could knock out Burns. I have no doubt in my mind. He's a really good boxer. And like I said, his boxing's been really getting better and better. But realistically, I see Herbert Burns walking him down, tying him up, dragging him to the ground, and once it's there, I think he's going to win by submission, probably in the first round. I think that's the most likely scenario. Next is John Dodson versus Merab Dvalishvili, and I think that this fight, John's kind of lucky that it's 3 rounds, because I feel like the longer this goes, the more it favors Merab. I think Merab has such a wrestling-heavy attack and such good cardio. And John Dodson's really hard to take down. He's really good at getting back up. But the thing is, he's getting older, and he's always been more of a flyweight. It's just the truth. He's a smaller guy for bantamweight, and Merab's not like the biggest guy ever, but the wrestling advantage he's going to have is huge, and I feel like the pace advantage he's going to have is also huge. I think that Dodson, his best chance is to catch him early and in the first round to just sprawl as hard as he can and just swing as much as he can. Because, like I said, I think that if this goes past the first round, I think we see Merab really start to take over in rounds 2 and 3. I think the first round's the closest one. I think if Dodson can catch him in the first, he'll probably win, and that's a big possibility. John Dodson's a really good striker with fast hands, but I just don't see it happening. I think Merab's striking is good enough to not get hit with the big shots, and I think his wrestling is more than good enough to just outwork Dodson for 3 rounds, and I think he's going to win at least a 29-20 decision, if not a 30-27 decision for Merab, mainly because of the wrestling. Next is Junior Dos Santos versus Jarizo Rozenstruik. This one's a little tough because it depends on Junior. If Junior just boxes with Jarizo, he's probably going to lose. I think Jarizo's got the speed and technique advantage at this point. Power's about the same. But like I said, I think Jarizo's just more technical at this point and more faster with his hands. But Junior has a massive advantage on the ground. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And this is the thing. Junior doesn't shoot for takedowns a lot, but when he does, he gets them. He's got a really good power double. Like, he just doesn't like to wrestle, but when he goes for takedowns, like I said, he doesn't miss that often. Like, there are guys where it was like when he was fighting Curtis Blades, shooting on him made no sense, but this is a fight where it's like this guy doesn't have insane takedown defense. Jarizo, I mean, most of the time when guys try to take him down, they get it. Alistair was getting him until he started to get tired. I mean, the first 2 rounds, I felt like he got him a couple times. I feel like, if Alistair, who has a horrible takedown offense, could get him, I think Junior could hit a takedown on Jarizo whenever he wants. That's the thing. If he does it, I think if he does that, he'll win by first round finish. I think he can take this guy down, mount him, and just finish him. I don't think he's going to do that. Like, I want him to, but I think he's just going to box with Jarizo, and because of that, it's tough, because that's what I think is going to happen, but I'm hoping Junior's smart about it. I'm going to pick Junior just because, in my mind, it's like, what's the smart decision? And it's Junior, because if Junior's smart, he's just going to take him down. So I just have to lean with what's the smartest thing to do, and hopefully Junior fights smart, shoots for a takedown early, gets it, and then, like I said, if Junior's on top, he's a black belt, and he's a big, heavy dude. Like, Jarizo's not going to get back up, and I think Dos Santos is just going to finish him. Next, we go into the co-main event, Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera, and this is weird because Marlon Vera, I think, is the better fighter, but he's a slow starter, and I feel like O'Malley's a fast starter. And those type of things tend to favor the fast starters. I think that technically this is kind of a bad matchup for O'Malley. I think Vera's got the type of style where he's just going to keep moving in on him and not let him throw the kicks, not give him space. I think he's also just a way better grappler. I think O'Malley's probably more athletic, but in terms of actual technique on the ground, Marlon Vera's got a huge advantage. He's a much higher level black belt than O'Malley. Like, O'Malley's like a purple belt, I think. It's just tough because the slow starter, fast starter thing. Fast starters usually do really well against slow starters. Marlon Vera's never been finished, but O'Malley hits really hard. So, to me, it's kind of like, I think this is another one where Vera's smart. He'll try to take this to the ground early. Even if he has to pull guard, I think that he's just way better on the ground. I just don't know, because I think both guys are really tough, and I just feel like if Vera can get this on the ground, especially if he's on top, he can probably win by sub. It's really tough, but I just have to go with a more well-rounded guy. I'm going with Vera. I think he doesn't get caught in the first, and I think eventually he does get to the ground, and once it's there, I think he's going to win by submission with like a rear naked choke or something. Finally, we go on to the main event. It's Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier, and both these guys' fights, like, I know the first fight, Daniel Cormier won by first round KO, but that fight was, like, super close up until that point, and that was, like, the last 30 seconds of the round. And the second fight, you know, Cormier was dominating early, but you saw as the rounds went on, it was starting to favor Stipe. And that's kind of my biggest fear, is that I think Daniel does tend to slow the longer fights go, especially if they're high pace. And I do think this fight's going to be high pace. It's like, unless Daniel catches him early, I think the longer this goes, the more likely Stipe is going to get that 4th or 5th round KO. And that's just what I think is the most likely scenario. I think, other than, you know, they are big heavyweights, and that first round KO can happen at any point in time. But I do feel like if both guys are just fighting like how they did in the second fight, it's just going to favor Stipe the longer it goes. I think every round is going to be really close and really fun and back and forth. This is probably going to be fight of the night. But I think it's going to be like the second fight. I think the first 3 or 4 rounds will be really close, and then come 4th or 5th, once Daniel starts to slow down, I think Stipe is going to start to pick it up, and I think he's going to win by knockout. So those are my predictions, guys. Please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.